Is democracy in danger of dying out? Will democracies all over the world fall? Did Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, did Plato predict the end of democracy? Is that what we're witnessing now? The end of democracy? Especially what is happening in the Americas right now. I'm going to present to you ancient Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle and their view on democracy, which was not pretty good actually. They had their big critiques points of democracy. Sorry, this is a video that's a bit hard for me to make because the topic is kind of depressing. It seems like they might have a point that something that's happening in the world right now, they predicted over 2,000 years ago would happen to democracy. Either the state is ruled by philosophy or people who know philosophy, or they're ruled by philosophers. Either way, you will never have justice in a society if it's not based in philosophy or philosophers in some way. So that's also the interesting part that I don't know many philosophers in politics, and I clearly don't see many big leaders as great philosophers nowadays. Take a look at the guy, which name I will not utter here in this video, but look at the guy who won the presidency in the United States recently. He doesn't strike me as a big philosopher. He's not. So in that sense, there's already some problematic thing here about modern democracy. In Plato's philosophy, we have the idea of the ship of fools, which is a giant metaphor for democracy. Imagine a ship. It has a captain. Usually it has one captain who decides where to go, where to navigate. But in a democracy, everybody wants to be captain. So there will be a fight at the helm, at the wheel, trying to navigate the ship where it's supposed to go. And they will push, everybody on the ship will push a captain aside because everybody wants to be captain. And what will happen with this ship? Well, it's going to be lost at sea. It's going to hit rock bottom. It's going to crash. It's going to be a shipwreck, and it's going to be at the bottom at the ocean because it will be lost at sea, where no place to go because everybody wants to fight where it wants to go. I think you get the metaphor here from Plato that this is going to crash. The one who knows the business about running a democracy, that's who we should entrust the government. The one who knows how to govern. They're expert at governments, and for Plato it is the philosophy schooled person. He calls it the ideal statesman. Some had also called it the philosopher king. Plato's idea that this is somebody who is educated and has read philosophy and understands philosophy and practices philosophy. He can rule and say what to do in a society. And that's who we should listen to, because he knows his business. He knows how to govern according to the right philosopher, because he is the expert on the subject of government. Kind of like the doctor. If something's wrong with you, we go to the doctor. Well, Plato says, if you want to know how to rule a state properly, you should go to the philosopher, because he knows how to govern fair and righteous and with wisdom, because he's also wise, he's the lover of wisdom. That's what philosophy from ancient times mean. Philosophy, the word means the love of wisdom. So the philosopher has wisdom. He can govern by wisdom. The problem is, Plato says, if we go to, we feel unhealthy, we go to our candyman, the baker who makes cakes and sweet and so forth. We let's just keep it for simple sake. We go to the candy man, one who sells candy. And we asked him, I feel bad, I feel unhealthy. Is there any problem with me eating your sweets that you sell me? And the candyman says, no, sweets are good for you. Do you feel good when you eat a sweet? Do you feel a great sensation in your body that, this tastes good? Do you feel that when you eat sweets? And you say, yeah, that's right. Then the candyman says, keep eating sweets. They're good for you. I promise you. Nothing bad will happen. Just keep eating these sweets and everything will be all right. And have some cake while you're at it. That's not the way to go about it. You can see the reason behind this. That if you're feeling unhealthy, you should not go to your candy man and ask him what is wrong and what you should do, because you will get a wrong answer. And that's the idea for Plato, that the one who really runs in a democracy are candymen. They don't know what the heck they're doing. They're selling you sweets. They're selling you candy. So, in Plato's critique of democracy, he says it's going to run short, it's going to go wrong. You remember the ship of fools? I told you earlier, it's going to end like that, in chaos, and it's going to be a shipwreck. But another way to also put Plato's critique of democracy is that in a democracy, people cannot handle this great freedom to vote and freedom to elect who to vote and what to do in a democracy. What should we do, this or that? There's too much freedom, and they don't have the willpower or the understanding to do this. So Plato warns that they would turn to the strong man, the tyrant. They will by themselves in a democracy, because they cannot handle all that freedom, they will themselves vote and give the power to the tyrant. There are 3 different ways to govern a state according to Aristotle, and they can all turn bad or they can all turn good. They all have the potential to be good or bad, and they can be perverted to an evil. They can all turn into a tyranny. In a monarchy, you can have the philosopher king. You can have somebody wise who are able to govern and not be selfish. And that's the problem when the monarch, the king, he becomes tyrannical. He comes to be perverted, only thinking about himself. So the monarch should have everybody's happiness to be considered when he governs. So if he only thinks about himself and becomes selfish, it becomes a tyranny, because then the monarch only does what he wants to do and doesn't care about his subjects. They are disposable. He just cares how much he can achieve for himself, no matter who suffers, as long as he does not suffers and gets what he wants. So that's how the monarchy becomes a tyranny according to Aristotle. It's the same with the aristocracy. It can turn into an oligarchy. In an aristocracy, you have a ruling body of elites, of nobles and so forth, who jointly rules and govern. But they also should do that for the people, for the common good of everybody, the happiness of everybody, one could say. But it could turn into an oligarchy if all those noblemen, they just do whatever they want and don't care about the people. They care about themselves. It becomes a few who rules by tyranny. But as you can see, it could be potential for good also, this aristocracy or oligarchy, if they're ruled by wise men who are philosophers. And generally, according to ancient philosophers, philosophers do not lust for power or lust for riches. They want wisdom. That's the only thing they really want. They want pure, rational wisdom. That's the highest good. That's knowledge, justice, and truth. That's what they're after. So, if these noblemen all are philosophers, then it can be a good government style to have an aristocracy ruling. It might be the most favorable, who knows, according to Aristotle. That's also something you could discuss. But when you come to a democracy here at the bottom, it also has potential for good if it's, but it's more difficult for this because too many people that wants one thing, they can turn into a tyranny. It could be the tyranny of the majority rule. That's a tyranny for Aristotle in democracy, that it turns into a tyranny because it's a majority rule. It's a mob rule, one can say, that well, imagine in a democracy they decide that 20% of these people living in democracy, we don't like them, so they should have no rights. Are all in favor? Well, they are, because this is majority rule, this is democracy. So 80% of this democracy feel, well, the last 20%, we don't care about them, because there's truth in majority. That's also something you always hear, that how can 1 million people be wrong? Well, they can. And that's the idea for Aristotle's critique of democracy, when it turns into a majority rule by tyranny against a few. Aristotle and his kinds were afraid of that this majority rule will disrupt the system totally and just replace one tyrannical oligarchy with a majority rule tyranny. But of course, if people in a democracy were all philosophers and wise men, then democracy could be good if they ruled and voted according to their best reasonable philosophical statements. But they probably won't. So that's why for Aristotle, democracies might be the least good way of government, because it's difficult to get so many people to be great philosophers and govern with wisdom. So it's much more easier to have a body, an aristocracy of wise philosophers who can govern. Or maybe just one, if it's a wise philosopher king. So this is the critique against democracy from Aristotle, and you can see it also is similar to Plato's, that democracy has dangers by all of us want to rule together as that's what democracy means, democracy. Demos is the people, so it means people's rule. Now, the ancient concept of the demagogue was something that both Aristotle and Plato was afraid of would thrive in a democratic society. You remember the metaphor about the candyman I told you earlier. That's what the demagogue does in a democracy. He sells the idea that he knows how to govern and how the state should be ruled, but he doesn't actually know. He has no wisdom. He has no expertise on the subject, but people think that he does. So he becomes like the candyman who tells you about your health, saying that put this candy in your mouth. How does it make you feel? Good. Then don't worry about it. Eat as much candy and sweet as you want. The demagogue in ancient Athens used rhetoric, manipulation, and flattery. They try to present themselves as a man of the people, that they were one of the champions of the common people. So they presented themselves as not an elite, not an intellectual or a philosopher even. They were men of the people. Man of the people. That was how they presented themselves. So they used what's called scapegoating and division, where they divided society into a good and honest citizen and then the corrupt elites playing Athens' problems on rich aristocrats, philosophers. Many of these demagogues in ancient Athens, they fueled resentment against intellectuals like Socrates, which was Plato's mentor and teacher, portraying somebody like Socrates as a threat to democracy. This helped lead to Socrates' trial and execution. So that's also one of the more personal reason why Plato didn't like democracy that much, as he saw it, the demagogues of a democracy killed his teacher, Socrates. So that's the general idea that a demagogue would use democracy as a weapon against their political opposition to gain power for themselves. So steer the crowd up by anger, hatred, all their emotions. But they never use really rational arguments. They try to steer away from that and say, these are the philosophers. They use all this philosophy that doesn't help you. We have traitors within Athens. We must rise up against this challenge, us, the people. You see where I'm getting at? So this was a critique point even back in the ancient Greece about these demagogues, that they were subversive to democracy itself. Mind you, anything that's happening now. That's interesting. Does the demagogue really thrive in the modern democracy? It's pretty obvious from this that they do, right? And they probably gained power now. So are we living in this end of democracy that both Aristotle and especially Plato prophesied? Is the guy who just won the American presidency, is he a demagogue? Of course he is. It's pretty obvious, don't you think? He spreads lies and misdirection. He's good at stirring up emotion. He appeals to emotion rather than reason and rationality. Good at stirring up emotions of hate and especially fear. And remember how he stirred up a mob like a demagogue would do in ancient times. He stirred up a mob for violence on January 6, 2021. And people died. innocent police officers died because of that stirring up of emotion in a mob to incite violence. So he is a demagogue in the worst sense. This is problematic because now a demagogue is in power, a would-be dictator, perhaps. Time will tell. This is a problem for democracy. In this concluding section here, this is my personal philosophical opinion about this, that, yeah, democracy is probably dying out with this election, because that's a very, very problematic thing with the election of that president, whose name I will not utter here, because it seems like now that who we vote for to govern us has nothing to do with morals or ethics. Is a known convicted felon. It's pretty obvious if he wasn't president, he would be in jail or more lawsuits. He was convicted of something, but now we will never have a judgment because he has immunity as president. This is problematic, and voters don't even care if he stirred up violence and people died. That's problematic for democracy, that it's about money in your pocket. He has, of course, extreme followers that will always vote for him, but a big majority who got him elected are normal people. Why did they vote for him? I often hear, yeah, America's economics is in shackles. It's cost too much for a cup of coffee in Starbucks, and eggs cost too much. So the problem is your wallet. That, okay, we believe this guy, he can get more money in my pockets, and because I am pressured with my economics, so this guy can help. I don't care if he's a convicted felon. I don't care if he's unethical. I don't care if he's a demagogue. I don't care. That is problematic when you vote with your wallet, because that's when democracy is going wrong. Remember, Aristotle had a feeling that democracy couldn't work that good because most people aren't able to include wisdom and rationality when they vote. And they don't. It seems like they don't anymore. And I think that's problematic. That's one of the reasons why I do this video, to kind of stipulate that, well, we were warned over 2,000 years ago that democracy could take a bad turn, and I feel like it actually did with this election. That's also the thing here, what to do now. What to do after this election. Should we just turn our back on democracy and say, okay, that was democracy, forget about it, I don't care? Or what to do? Should we try to save democracy? Of course. My fellow philosophers, when I talk about this, they always talk about we should have better democracies. We should strive to improve our democracy and make it better. I hope we can do that, but I'm not so sure if it's too late. We don't know. It's kind of like with the environment or climate change. Maybe it's too late to do something, somebody says. Or maybe it's not too late to do something. It's the same with this end of democracy. Can we save it? Or is it too late? I hope we still have a chance, but this is 4 years with a demagogue would-be dictator. What would he do? If our democracy is going toward the end, can we save it? And how do we save it? By a revolution? Knives to the Senate House, like in Roman times? Or should we try to improve democracy, make it better with the democratic institutions we have? Should we better them? all of us, the people, try to better this democracy, if it's possible, especially in 4 years. I'm actually working on a book. Right now it's only a concept idea of a book, but it's a book about improving our democracy and make it better and kind of fix some flaws that's inherent in democracy. So this is what I think I can do, really, to get this, write this book and get it out there and spread the message how we can maybe improve our democracy in the long run. Fight for your democracy. Do something. Don't turn your back on democracy and don't care. Care for it. Care for your democracy and try to fight for it in some way or somehow. Hopefully non-violent. So this is it. I hope you enjoyed this video and take care in the future.